Hey guys, welcome to Behind the Helmet. I'm Sting Ray Robb, driver of the number 51 Honda with Dale Coyne and Rick Ware Racing. And joining me as well as my co-host, David Hoffman. David, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Stingray. I feel like this is a little different from usual. Now you're the one hosting the show, so might as well throw you on NBC now.
We've got a little practice in over the last few months talking, so this is good. More practice, and it's kind of fun to do something different here.
Yeah, for all we know, you could be into like hosting some show or whatever else. So got to get that host driver stuff in a little early now.
There you
But
go.
but yeah, so as you mentioned it, behind the helmet, Sting Ray Robb. It's been a long time since we've had a episode. Obviously, it's been a little crazy. You had Indy, first Indy 500 start. We'll get into that, but yeah, a lot of ground to cover. So I thought, why don't we kind of time this out? So to move things along a little bit quicker, so we can get to Indy and Road America here coming up. I'm going to give you 1 minute for each race. We'll let Indy aside for now. We'll start with Barber, and then I'll say, all right, time's up, and then we'll move into the Indy GP. How's that sound?
That sounds great.
All right, let me get my trusty stopwatch. So, all right, here we go. Are you ready for a speed round of what happened to Barber? Start.
So at Barber, that was a track that I've been to before. I love Barber. It's got lots of elevation change, permanent road course. I'm a big permanent road course guy. I think that there needs to be more of those races on the schedule. And I felt like that was the first race that we rolled off the truck where I actually felt like an IndyCar driver. I felt like we could be competitive. Didn't qualify as well as we wanted. I think it was like 21st or something. David, my teammate, also had a tough time. He wasn't too far up the road for me in the lineup there. And then we went into the morning warm up before the race, and race pace was phenomenal. I think that we were P14 on the time charts in that morning warm up. And that was, kind of in dirty air on primary tires and felt like we had some good pace on the alternates. So going into the race, felt very confident. I got a good start, made up a couple positions on the start, and then went into the first round of pit stops, and we did an undercut compared to some of the other drivers, and we were able to make up some spots doing that as well. I was close some room to my teammate, and about lap 30, I think I want to say, we were getting ready, just did our second pit stop, um, and I had some issues with the car. I'd come out of a corner, the throttle would cut out, and so we ended up having to pull over on the side of the road, exiting turn 9, I think it is, um, just with some mechanical failures. And it's unfortunate because I felt like we were moving up some good spots in the race, passing cars. I felt comfortable, and ended our day on lap 36.
Then moving on, I was a minute 30, so not too bad. uh,
Dang it.
we'll work on that. And Indy GP, obviously the start of the month of May. How was the Indy GP?
MotoGP is another track that I know and love. Permanent road course. Qualifying did not go the way we wanted yet again. My teammate and I were only separated by 2 spots, so it kind of was what it was, and that was the car that we had for the day in qualifying. But going into the race yet again, I felt like we had decent pace, at least in the morning warm up, and made contact with my teammate on like lap 2, and that's like rule number 1: don't do that. So I felt very very bad for the team and for David and the rest of the world out there.
Oh, that was like record breaking. That might have been 30 seconds
It
at
was
the
a pretty
most.
short race, so
Yeah. I guess, talking about that a little bit, I know that, obviously you don't want to take out your teammate or get in any contact with Malukas, but just, is there anything you can take from that race or just kind of how to reevaluate, I guess, overtaking and, figuring out just what the balance is of, just, stuff like that.
yeah, I think so. That was an instance where I was fighting with Roman Grosjean for position. We went into turn 1 on that same lap, battling for it, and I held him off. Went down to turn 7, broke really late on the inside trying to defend against Roman, and David was fighting with Scott McLaughlin and was trying to do the over under, and so he was just overslowed compared to the rest of the cars around him, and the rest of the cars around him was me and Roman, and I think it was just one of those cases where all the variables lined up in the wrong direction. And when he tried to come across the apex, I was, trying to outbrake Roman, and we made contact. So, I think that had he done something different, had I done something different, had Roman done something different, had Scott done something different, we would all be out of that scenario. But it was just kind of like a bad storm of variables.
And that's just one of those things. put behind you and understand, and just know going forward that, like just, it's one of those things some things aren't in your control, and things can go differently in all sorts of ways. But moving on to Indy 500 qualifying. Oh my goodness, that was that was an animal in itself. Just take me through Saturday qualifying at the 2.5 mile oval at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And those first few runs, just how pressuring is it having to go out there and lay down four perfect laps, not just one, but four, just trying to get that average as high as you can?
Going into qualifying day, I thought we had a pretty good car. I know it wasn't the best on the grid, but I knew that it was going to be pretty decent. We could qualify midfield, and then we ended up on Saturday having both of our team cars fighting for the last row. And so that's not a position you want to be in. And then, that's a lot of pressure on myself as a rookie. I felt like I wanted to just kind of skate through and not be able to have to spend too much time in the car. But we did multiple runs, and each run we were, about the same speed, didn't really make up any time. And so it was really tough because as a driver, it's 10 miles of just executing a lap. And so for myself, I just knew I needed to keep my foot to the floor and adjust the tools as needed. And it wasn't enough to get us through on Saturday. So we had to go back on Sunday for the last chance qualifier.
And you mentioned your teammate David Malukas. Both of you guys were kind of near the bottom of the board. Then might have been an hour, 2 hours left. He shot up the board to kind of secure his spot. Just throughout the day, understanding that that was his first time last year doing it. What type of advice did you get from him potentially just on going throughout the day?
David, I think, was pretty worried. I think that we were all pretty stressed in the garage. So there wasn't much advice being passed around other than we need to get this done. And so I think that we didn't talk much on Saturday. Come Sunday, I think that it was kind of like okay, David made it through. We can focus our efforts on Stingray. And even then, it was very, very stressful.
And then gunshot sound on day one to end it. Just you now have to face three Ray Letterman Lanigan cars in the last chance shootout. What were your emotions there? Just understanding that, man, you essentially have to go up against 90% of another team, and you're kind of the lone wolf in that scenario.
Yeah, not a good feeling. Not a good feeling at all. And we were the second car to go out on the track, and so Lundgaard went first, then us second. And so I knew that I just had to get Lundgaard had been faster all weekend compared to the other two cars, and so I just had to get either close or just ahead of him, and we got really really close to Christian, and so I felt like that was a good enough spot to be in. But then you got to wait for the 45 minutes to run out the rest of the time on the clock, and then you can kind of celebrate a little bit. But um, saw Graham's run and then saw Jack's run, and we knew that beating two cars was all that we needed to do. And it's really hard to get multiple runs and go faster, but Jack did, which was crazy. I kept getting worried. I'm like, oh my goodness, Jack is going out. Jack's going out, and did two other runs after his first run. And so it was a crazy day. All the emotions you have, kind of like the low of like, oh, we're in the last chance qualifier, and then the high of like, we made it through the last chance qualifier. And so, yeah, it was kind of a relief, a breath of fresh air after the 2 weeks of preparation to, confirm that we're going to be in the Indy 500.
And just with the Sunday qualifying, that was crazy in itself. I thought it was ludicrous that Jack Harvey could even remotely like get a second run in without really being able to cool down anything. Just I don't think we've ever seen something like that before. Just what was like when you see that, it's like, what do you think? And you think, man, like this, obviously Graham couldn't get a second run out, but at that point, no, like watching kind of Graham sit there aimlessly on pit lane, knowing that either you're going to be in or you're going to be out. Just, I mean, it's how as a driver, just seeing another guy go through something like that, just what comes to mind.
I mean, for Jack's perspective, I think that he needed that. He's been having kind of a rough last year and a half. And so for him, I think that it was kind of cool to see, even though it was going against kind of his boss and Graham, being being teammates. I'm sure that's really tough, but it was crazy to see him do multiple runs. I mean, you see him go up for the second time, you're like, what's he doing? Like, there's no way, it's not happening. And then you're like, oh, okay, maybe it is. Then he goes up for the third one, you're like, okay, seriously, dude, like just give it up, it's not happening. And then he does it. And so I thought it was interesting to see the team allow him to kind of go for it because he put Graham out. He put his teammate out. So um, it was cool to see that. But Graham, everyone I think felt for him, and I think that he earned a little bit of respect from the way that he handled it, just because it was emotional, and that's a tough thing to be in the position of.
And a lot of your family, I saw they were on pit lane for that moment of sealing the deal, just the moments you knew you were locked in and to the 500. And when the day's done, just what were those emotions like for not only yourself but your family, just seeing everyone kind of rallying around you there?
Oh, it was so cool. My mom, I think, was crying for the 45 minutes that the clock was running out. She was already a nervous wreck, but she got excited, and I think that we were all very excited. I got out of the car and I hugged all my mechanics and then hugged my parents and I started crying a little bit. And it was just like one of those things where it's a realization of a lot of work, not just from myself, but from the team, from my family. And you don't realize how special that moment is until you have to go through it. And I think it gave me a bigger appreciation for the Indy 500. Going through that made me understand, the impact that this race has.
And then obviously going into race week, lots of stuff going on. I mean, you're not just laying around. There are lots of lead up events and all that other stuff. All that other stuff. Just you got the last row party, which was interesting. Always an interesting, unique aspect. Media day, the parade. Just what were some of the highlights and coolest moments for you during that week leading up to the 500?
Yeah, like you said, we were plenty busy. The last row party was actually a lot of fun. They do a good job of making light and joking around with everything that was going on there. And it was kind of funny because the four guys that were in the last chance qualifier were at the last row party. And with the incident with Steph Wilson, it's unfortunate, but it allowed Graham to be in the race. And so it's just kind of fun to like poke fun at each other. And we're all in the same spot, so it's like poking fun at yourself a little bit. But I think the week I underestimated leading up to the 500 because there is so much media attention around the event, and you get up at 7:30 in the morning, and you have your first interview right then, and then you're done at 8:45 that night, your last interview or last event, and so there's just a lot that goes into it. It's very tiring, but you're not doing anything. You're just sitting around talking all day, and so for myself, I think that the best part of it all was probably the parade. The parade was really cool to see everyone come out and cheer. And we had a lot of Sting Ray fans out there. There's a lot of guys with their own merch. We had some friends and family. We had probably 100 people from Idaho or other places that were relatives or investors or whatever else may be come out to support. And so it's just really cool to see everyone get so excited about the event.
And going into race day, just the sights and sounds of it or at Indy is massive. Just from your perspective, what were some of the things that blew you away as you're, leading up to getting into the car, whether it's, waving to the crowd, getting introduced as an Indy 500 starter, just anything that kind of stuck out to you right before you hop in?
It's kind of funny because I got to do this the last 2 years as a fan before I was a driver. And so I'm glad I did that because it made me really appreciate the event and get the whole show of it all. But as a driver, you're so nervous getting ready to get in the car. And so it's kind of overwhelming. You're not able to take everything in as much as I'd like to. And so, playing the taps, seeing the flyover, playing the national anthem, those are things that kind of send chills up my spine a little bit. And with that many people, where you have 300,000 people inside of a stadium, 300,000 plus live fans inside of a stadium, and it goes silent when the taps play. And so it's a cool experience to have that, and then hear the start of the motors and everyone's screaming, and then doing the warm up laps. Just doing the warm up laps, you get to see the color of just the fans in the stadium there, and it's really cool to see how many people are. It's more than just a race in Indianapolis; it's like an entire holiday, and so they set out a month for this one day event, and so it's really cool to kind of experience it all from both perspectives, as a fan and as a driver.
I'm sure it's a little bit different feel, you're on the one side of the fence for, as being a fan, and then all of a sudden you're kind of thrust into it. Just, I mean, like, is there anything or that can prepare you for that moment?
I had some warnings. I think that with Charlie Kimball kind of helping us out for the month of May and being some guidance for myself and David being a rookie last year, they kind of warned me of what was to come and what to expect. And it's never enough. Until you're there, it's not enough of a warning because it's something that you have to experience in order to really realize the magnitude of it. And so for myself, it was really cool to kind of be in awe, be awestruck by it all.
And I know you mentioned Charlie Kimball there. Just he's been your driver coach here. Just how has he helped you, and just what have you, and what how does he get the best out of you, and and like just with communicating and helping you move forward.
Yeah, working with Charlie the first half of the season, it was really good because he has that IndyCar experience. And so dealing with the off track just as much as the on track stuff was a big part of it. Understanding, okay, do I need to get a bus for the 500? When do I need to go to this? What should I go and take a nap right now? Things that are fairly basic, but they make a difference because you go through the month of May and it's nonstop. I mean, you're at the track almost every day. Your time is in low supply. And so understanding how to manage that best and understand how to get the best out of the team while doing all of that is very important. So having Charlie kind of by my side and helping the team out as well. I think that having him on the stand allowed the team to kind of have some weight off their shoulders, allowed the engineers to engineer, and allowed the rest of the crew to do their job. And he's got experience on both ends of the spectrum there, so he could see, okay, the crew needs to be doing this when this is happening, and then the engineer needs to be focusing on this, and you say this, and they're just like the general protocols he had a good understanding of and kind of kept everyone on their feet.
As soon as the drop of the green flag, just getting into a run at Indy, just how was the balance for you in the early goings as you're just trying to get into a rhythm of things?
Yeah, I mean it was a tough first couple stints in the car. I'm gonna be honest. We corded left front tires on our all of our sets of tires that were on the car, which is that's super tough because you want to go long on stints if you're starting back in the pack. You want to be pitting long to try and make up some time on the leaders, and we weren't in a position to do that. So we had to do a couple short stops, and the pit stops were clean. We got a little racy with some other drivers, and then about I think it was lap 90, started getting some pack run, or maybe we'll say lap 80, mid 80s, started getting some pack running. And that was really tough because with the understeer that we had in the car, getting behind in the car, everyone was complaining about it all month. It was just the kind of general trait of the cars, but you get that air wash over the front wing and the car would just take off towards the wall. And so we saw incidents like that during the race with Felix Rosenquist getting past, and then him hitting the wall and just getting the air taken off his front wing. There's nothing you could do. You could just turn into a passenger. But yeah, it was a tough first few stints, and then obviously the day ended a little ahead of schedule.
Yeah, you mentioned that I think it was like lap 90. Graham Rahal went under you there, and I know you're pretty upset about it at first, but then apologized on social media. Just at least from my perspective, just looking at it, it's been a little bit since I've seen it, but it looked like you kind of got the raw end of the deal just with how Lady dove in there, and just I know you mentioned how air is so important, especially in the corners, and just how it can really swing things. Just what did you see or feel after the fact of that prompted you to apologize later on?
Yeah, I mean, in the moment, the facts that I knew were that Graham was down 2 laps. He wasn't on the lead lap. He wasn't fighting for position, and we were running in traffic just trying to hold on. And when he was behind us, he pulled out the lap before. I defended the inside, and he just kind of let me have the turn. No big deal. Moved on. And then on that lap there, I was just like doing the same thing. I didn't defend as hard to the inside because he wasn't pushing it. And then I thought it was a little bit of a late move. It was the latest move that I'd seen on myself, but looking back at the footage, it wasn't super late. And so that's kind of where I got angry, right? Because you see in the situation we had a lot of understeer, a lot of left front tire deg, and had it been 10 laps sooner, had it been early on in the race, we would have been probably okay. But because it was at that time and on that stint, we were struggling, and so there's just again a lot of variables that went into making the accident happen. And afterwards, I got on the interview and I blamed Graham through and through, and I shouldn't have done that. Immediately knew that that was the wrong thing to do, and he didn't deserve that. And heat of the moment, that's probably the angriest that you're going to see me. And looking back at the footage afterwards, that's when I sent out that tweet saying, I didn't have the best interview there. And so, looking back, I think that there was some stuff to learn for myself, some stuff to learn on the car side. But it was frustrating because we went out fighting with a car that was 2 laps down.
And the fact that that's probably the angriest you'll ever see, that's I'd say that's pretty darn good. Compared to other guys, whether it's NASCAR, IndyCar, whoever it may be. Just, but you handled yourself well. And did you have you talked to Graham recently about that or?
Yeah, he sent me a text that night, and it was a very, very brief conversation. We never talked in person or on the phone, but yeah, there was some things that were said there.
So obviously Joseph Newgarden won for the first time. The finish had a lot of varying opinions. I guess from your perspective as a driver, just should it have finished under caution with the amount of red flags that were displayed during that little time frame, or just from your perspective, do you feel the race ended the correct way?
It's tough, right? Because as a driver, you want to finish under green, I think, for the most part, unless you're Marcus in that situation where you're leading under caution. I've won races under caution, and I've also won races under green. So I think my perspective is that it's the Indianapolis 500. You let the guys go racing, and I don't want a NASCAR situation where you're just delaying it over and over and over and over and over again. But it just got so chaotic there at the end of the race that I think that it's one of those things where it got a little too long. And so I think that you kind of got to call it at the end of the day at some point. So I've heard both cases. I think the race ended how it should have. I think that Joseph was a deserving winner, and I'd say it's about time for him. It was really cool to see him win, and his celebration going into the crowd after was really cool to see. But the whole race was just chaotic. So I don't think that you can call the stewards wrong or right either way. I think it kind of was what it was, and welcome to motorsports. You either win or you lose, and you move on.
I think because of that type of finish, I mean, we were in for a real treat to be, to say the least. And I mean, like the finish itself, with the new guard going into the stands, it didn't hurt the sport, that's for sure. Because then I remember seeing a tweet that Sports Center was tweeting about the Indy 500, which is huge, from that perspective. And obviously, you don't want to continue crashing out cars, and we see that in NASCAR all the time. But you know, it worked out this time, but yeah, I can see both sides to where there's a line of, all right, this is a bit much.
But I think that at the end of the day, it's kind of see it in other sports, right? Play basketball, whatever else. You get into the final minutes, you got to let the boys play ball, and so no ticky tack fouls. You don't call things that are just making the game good, hard playing, good, hard racing, and so you let the racing be the show.
And as you close the book on the month of May, just looking back at the entire month, obviously very lots of stuff going on, both on and off the track. Just what's the biggest thing that you learned, or what was the takeaway from Indy that you can go forward with?
Think I learned a lot of patience on and off the track. The idea as a young driver coming to IndyCar is that you have to be full gas on the throttle all the time, and that's not always the way to success. You got to be able to switch on and off. You got to be able to push on the push laps, and you got to be able to back it off when you need to. And so, learning how to rest away from the track as well was a tool that I didn't know I needed. And so there's just a lot to learn during the month of May. And the experience as a whole was really cool because, like I said, living in Indianapolis now, it's not just a holiday here; it's even bigger than that. And so it's more than a race, and it's kind of cool to see the city kind of come around and support. We had neighbors with Indianapolis 500 flags in their front yard, and we actually had one of them that had a sign that said Sting Ray on it. And like our driver for the year is Sting Ray Robb, and like we didn't even know him, but it was just really cool to kind of see the city rally around the support of the drivers and the series and the races as a whole. So closing the book of the month of May, I'm glad it's over. I'm glad that it's done because it was not the way that we wanted it to go, but I'm excited to do it again next year, hopefully.
And it's going to be a sight to see, and obviously you'll have a lot more experience, and you'll be even more prepared going into next year. And moving into Detroit, I know the layout this was different. The streets of Detroit for the first time, and a lot of drivers were critical of the layout, with it being so tight and bumpy. And I know one driver, I don't, he went anonymous, but he had said it's not a street course, type of thing. Just what were your initial thoughts of, the streets of Detroit and just as you're getting on the racetrack? And
Yeah, so lucky enough for us, we drive for Honda and they have a really good simulator, and so that allowed us to kind of get some seat time in ahead of the event itself. Unfortunately, though, it's only going to get you as close as what the scans are done, and so we were guessing of what the track was going to be like, and when you arrive there, it's way crazier than I was expecting. And so the bumps on the front straightaway were insane. I think it was Grosjean that broke a damper in the rear of his car, just trying to go offline to pass someone on the straightaway. And so it's just like, wow, when you're talking about a straight line, uh, bumps that are breaking dampers, that's pretty extreme. And I think that the race itself, the track was expected to be a little bit longer, and because it wasn't that length, it made it hard to race on. It was narrow, it was tight, and there was just a lot of different things that kind of made it a tough track. And I think that my honest take on the race weekend is that it shouldn't have been called a race. It should have been called an exhibition because um, the track itself, it was a first year track, but it needs a lot of work, I think, for us to go back and make it a real race.
And yeah, obviously, it wasn't the most smooth race, but the unique thing about IndyCar is it still wound up to be a pretty, interesting race, between Power and Palou going at it, like battles all over the place. So you guys made it as racy as you possibly could, which was great, for a first year track. And I know, fortunately wasn't as many crashes, a dirt derby like Nashville has been over the years, but yeah, it certainly was interesting to say the least. And another unique aspect was the two-sided pit lane, which I don't know the last time I ever saw something like that. Just how did that change you and the team's just approach to pit road, if anything?
Was a lot crazier leaving the pit box, and luckily there wasn't any like massive cautions where there was a group of cars diving into pit lane all at one time. You only got a few at a time, and so that allowed us to kind of skate through the pit exit to get back out on the racetrack a lot easier because you're going from four lanes down to one essentially with that two-sided pit lane. And so when you got cars launching out of their boxes trying to make up position, uh, there's no room there, and so it made it really tough to kind of cycle out even on the green flag of the other practice sessions or whatever else may be. It was really tough to kind of sort yourselves out and understand, okay, I got to let you go. I'm going to back you up and then try and slot into position. And so, um, and it was kind of cool to see the two-sided pit lane because you kind of see across and see what the other cars are doing. But I think that there's needs to be more information on, okay, did they have an advantage on this side? Did they have a disadvantage on this side? What can we do to make this better? And so for myself, I think that it could be something that they could leave in, but there needs to be a few things worked out in the meantime.
You ended up finishing 22nd in the race. I know you had gone off into the runoff on lap 50 or something like that. Just how would you describe your race?
Oh, man, the race that I experienced was just as much like Detroit as the track itself. It was bumpy, it was rough, it was tight, and a little chaotic. So it was good, but we survived, and I think that going into the race, we knew that there was going to be attrition from the other drivers, but there wasn't as much as we were expecting. I think everyone did a good job to kind of stay off the wall, stay clean. But I think that was large in part to everyone just kind of backing it down, making it a little easier on themselves. But to see cars crashing under yellow was an interesting thing. There was more cars that crashed under yellow than there was under green flag conditions. So that was a curious thing to see. I think that there was a new learning experience for everyone on the tires there, on how to turn the tires on and how to get the grip level up. But yeah, very interesting to see that. And we experienced some of our own issues with that. But yeah, it's a race that we did, and we're moving on from it.
Now you're back to a actual permanent road course, Road America. I know last year I remember vividly you you were leading the Indy next race. Then it was red flag because of that one crash, and then you had to go to the bathroom. Fortunately, you didn't go in the car. I don't think so, right? I forget.
No, it was clean.
All clean. Just moving on to Road America. Just what makes that such a unique racetrack to compete at?
Yeah, Road America is one of those tracks that's been around forever. It's 4 miles of just high speed. It used to be a low grip, slightly bumpy track, but this year they've repaved it, and we got to test there last week. And so it's kind of cool to see the tire degradation change and also the grip level change. I think we're going to see some track records this week, which is really cool. And maybe some more passing because of that, but we'll see what it's like. I think that Road America is a track that I've really liked because you can pass, you can race. It lends itself to some different strategies, and it's a cool track, and it's in a beautiful area. Being in Wisconsin, lots of greenery, rolling hills, and I just really like the track as a whole, the facilities, all of it. It reminds me of my karting days, being at some cool rural road courses there, and Just kind of you feel like you're racing through the forest a little bit.
It's gonna be a cool aspect, and just heading into these bulkier stretch of races. I know July's jam packed. That's coming up. Just how do you feel you and the team are at, just in terms of gaining on the competition and kind of feeling more in tune of, hey, I'm an IndyCar driver and I know what I'm doing type of thing.
That I'm getting into a better position. My confidence levels been hit obviously with the impacts that we've had as of recent, but I think that I'm getting to a spot now where I understand where the car is where I want it to be or whatever else may be. So understanding what it looks like to be an IndyCar driver, I don't have to be on the learning process. I can adapt now and I can make changes and I can help the team make calls that I might not otherwise have been able to at the beginning of the year. And we're building my toolbox as far as this adjustment does this, this adjustment does this. And so what can I do to feel out what I want? What do I need? And I think the team's done a fairly good job of they're working their tail ends off. And, our engineering crew, I think, is just going to keep getting better throughout the year. We had a rough start, obviously, with David and I not being in the best position so far this year, but I think that they hit their stride in the second half of the season last year as well. And so I don't expect anything different. I think that getting the permanent road courses right is going to be important for us because those are the last two of the year, and they're going to be the most exciting and most fun, I think, being at Portland and Laguna Seca. But Road America is our primary concern next. We've done some testing there, we've done some simulator work there, and it all lends itself to more experience, more understanding, better knowledge, and hopefully that means more speed.
And it's gonna be interesting here. You'll have a lot more time on the racetrack, so hopefully that'll kind of equate into more success. Let's stop talking about racing. How about some random questions? How's that sound? All right. So first question, what's your favorite place you've ever traveled to?
Favorite place I've ever traveled to? Oh man. For food, Italy. For architecture, Belgium.
Belgium. Wow. Wait, when did you go to
Yeah.
Belgium?
I went to Belgium in the fall of, I'm doing some math here in my head. I think it was 2015 or 2014, maybe 2014 or 2015 for a go-kart race over there. And it's actually really cool because we went over there for 2 weeks and we had a race one weekend and then a race the next weekend, but nothing in between. And so we got to travel around, toured a little bit, went to Spa, got to see Michael Schumacher's championship Ferrari drive around Spa in the rain there. And that was kind of like one of those moments where you sit and you just watch, you get chills up your back, goosebumps all over the place. It was so cool. So
Yeah,
cool.
I can't imagine seeing that on the racetrack. Yeah, I'd say for me, I haven't been outside the US, so it's kind of more limited. Um, and we recently, yeah, we were in Nashville. Thought that was really cool for the first time. Wasn't able to get down to like the street circuit where that's going to be, but just that place is so unique. Gatlinburg, love seeing the Smoky Mountains. That was cool. We saw a bear going through the trash at night, so
Nice.
that was interesting. So we weren't eating, so we're good. Uh, so next question, best dessert you've ever had?
This is a trick question because my grandma makes good desserts and it would be shameful to not pick hers. But she does apricot cobbler. But outside of grandma, I would probably say tiramisu in Europe. I don't remember where, but somewhere over there I discovered it and it was the best thing ever. What about you?
I mean, I'd say so. We went to this. It was called like the Milkshake Bar in Nashville, and it like stacked up. So it had like I don't know, maybe like a brownie here, then like ice cream on top, and then another brownie. It was very like gaudy and just kind of crazy, but it tasted really good. And I only had like half of it because it was 90% brownie, and then the stuff's at the bottom. You're just like, okay, I'm done. But you got a free cup out of it, so it worked out well.
Cool. That sounds good.
Yeah, I feel like all the time I end up overeating chocolate and then like because you're like, oh, that sounds good on paper, but then as soon as you get halfway through, then you're like, oh, this is why I should not be eating this. I shouldn't be. This feels bad. But then you get back up the next day, you're ready to roll. Okay, so final question. Outside of racing, what's a bucket list item that you really want to do at some point in your life?
Ooh, that's a great question. One thing that I've always wanted to do is an outdoor climbing trip slash camping trip. Like near Yosemite or Moab or something like that. I actually watched a video of a snow skier. He built the van up and he just went up the West Coast. He did surfing, skiing, climbing, and mountain biking, I think, all in one trip. So I went from California to Canada, and I think that would just be something that'd be really cool to do and just, take a few weeks to be outside and do all those different activities.
Yeah, I'd say that sounds really cool. Being able to see the outdoors to its fullest. For me, I think it kind of struck the idea when I, watched Cars for the first time when I was 7, but going through Route 66 that whole entire way, I mean, I feel like that's just one of those things where the sea just, from one side of the country to the other. And I think it'd be cool to do at one point is have an RV, then just kind of go out, see whatever's out there.
It'd be very cool. It sounds like a good plan.
Well, that's all the time that we have today. Look out for more episodes here soon. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. You can follow this podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Behind Catch. And where can the fans follow you, Stingray?
Well, I'm on all social medias at Sting Ray Robb, except for Twitter, which is at Sting_Ray_Robb. And Rob is ROBB, two B's. And then if you want to follow along on the IndyCar circuit, we're broadcast on NBC Sports Network and the NBC app, Peacock TV. And we have our next race at Road America this weekend.
You mentioned it. Make sure to tune in to the Sonzio Grand Prix at Road America, April 30th. Oh, wait, no. Goodness, I didn't change the date. What's the date? What's Sunday?
Oh man, I don't know. June.
Goodness.
Let's see.
June 18th, I think. Yes.
June 18th.
June
Yes.
18th. Yeah, tune in to Road America June 18th at 1 p.m. Eastern on USA Network and Peacock. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.